Leslie, tell me who you are, what you do, and who you work for.
Hi, I am Leslie Moore. I am VP of Global Corporate Communications for Juniper Networks.
Superb. So let me start with this first one. This is the easy one. Where in your life have you allowed fear to limit your opportunities?
That's the easy one, probably because everybody gives you probably the same answer. Um, well, maybe not. I would, gosh, I think it starts even when you, um, and this is probably I was thinking about my answers, but I just thought of another one because it goes back. I probably early on, as early as you can remember. So much so, something as small as when you had to line up in PE when you were in first grade, and they chose captains who were better at volleyball or better at basketball, and the teacher let each child go in order and pick the best person first, right? So, okay, I choose Bobby, I choose Tim, I choose Leonard, I choose whomever. And I remember just fear, panicking, sweating, standing in that line, fear of being picked last, right? Even if I didn't know how to play soccer, I did not want to be picked last, right? So the fear usually starts when I think when other people maybe are choosing your own destiny, you get the fear of what your destiny is going to be, or fear of even speaking up, saying, "Why aren't I being picked first? I'm better than he is," right? My earliest memory probably is now that I just recalled it um, is is that like we've had to overcome, you know, the pecking order, the pecking stage. And if I would have known then what I would have known now, I probably would have been even more frightened because it just gets stronger. That pecking order just gets heavier and heavier to kind of break through, right? And sometimes it's by choice of others. Sometimes it's just by the culture you're in. Sometimes you can't control it. Sometimes you can, and it just like I said, it's that barrier between being picked first and being picked last just keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker and stronger and stronger and stronger. So the fear is always there. But like you said in the beginning, it's having the courage to actually break through that fear or do something different or make a move despite your fear. So I think it starts, obviously extremely early and it keeps going. I was an engineering major at Fresno State, and I'm going to date myself. It was 1989, and I was a civil engineering major, and I was one of two women in my major class. Not in school, but in the major, in the civil engineering department. And it's crazy to think back. To me, it doesn't seem like that it was that long ago. I never got called on, even if I raised my hand. I was never asked to give an example. I was never asked to pair up with somebody else. As study buddies, we always had study buddies. I was never invited. I know that the dean had special events. Never. Like it was like I was invisible. And the other girl in there eventually dropped out. So it was just me until I was a junior, actually, at Fresno State within the engineering field. And I don't think that helped back then. I think it felt like it was, I should sit still and should be quiet and not talk. And um, it didn't help. And I think that fear actually almost made me, or did actually make me change directions. Actually, once I graduated, it made me change direction in my career more to a comms PR focus because just by, like it said, just by the industry that it is, PR and comms is more women dominated, right? So for me, it was less of a fear to go into something where I felt like I would be more accepted or I could have more of a voice. So I think that sort of fear actually ultimately changed my direction in my career, which actually turned out to be a great thing because I love what I do. But I'm sure fear had a big thing to, a big reason behind it. And sometimes I don't think about it. Like people always say, "Oh, you're a civil engineering, you're an engineering major. How did you get into comms?" And there's always a reason. There's always the job that's available or the company that you're working for. But looking back, I'm sure fear also played an big underlying role in why I chose to do what I do now.
Yeah, makes sense. So, what do you think is the greatest contributor to your success?
So I don't want to say it's particularly a person, but it was. I had a fabulous mentor at one of my last companies that I worked at, and he didn't mince words, and he was highly successful, and he ended up buying an NBA basketball team, and he had founded his own company, and he would say one-liners, and a lot of the time the one-liners were pithy, or sometimes they were actually meant to even to kind of put you in your place. And sometimes I would get I'd get ruffled a little bit, like, how dare you? And then I think about it later, and I'm like, it wasn't personal. It was absolutely meant to help me progress, right? But I would get my feathers ruffled, because then I think, wait, other people aren't getting their feathers ruffled about it. Like, these men sitting over here aren't ruffled. So I need to, you know what I mean? He's giving them the same advice. It's not just me. But then every now and then he would have these one-liners. And there was something he said to me once that literally changed my life, changed my career, and changed the trajectory of where I am now. And he said to me, don't be right, be successful. And I remember I was in the middle of, he'd always come in my office too to escape and hide. He'd come in and close the door because he didn't think anybody would find him in there, because my office had a little alcove behind the door. So he'd always just sit there, so when people looked, they couldn't see him. And he noticed one day that I was just frantically typing. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, oh, I'm just, Matt is not listening to me. And Matt was our CFO. And he says, well, tell me what he said and tell me what you're writing. And I'm like, no, it doesn't interest you. It's fine. I'll figure this out. And he said, no, read it to me. So I stopped and read it. And he looked at me and said, don't be right, be successful. And I looked at him and I just said, yeah. And I kept writing. He said, stop what you're doing. Delete your email. And I said, no, I've written a lot of stuff already. And he goes, delete your email. And so I deleted it. And he said, look me in the eye and repeat what I said. Don't be right, be successful. And it literally sunk in, and it changed the way I deal with relationships, personal relationships, my children, my spouse, and definitely my job and my professional life. And just, what is the outcome that you're trying to get to? Does it matter if you're right? What if there's 2 people involved, or if there's 200 people involved? Your reply should be that everybody is successful. It will save you heartache, it will save others heartache, and everybody will get to the end result a lot quicker. And it literally has changed my life. Like, I don't have any tattoos, but I always say if I was going to get one, that would be it. So it was something simple as somebody saying that to me, but also making me listen, because I wasn't listening. You know how people say something back and forth, like, oh, my advice would be you do this. And you're like, okay, I've never heard that before. That's original. He literally made me stop and listen to him and repeat it back to him. And so listening was also something that I think has made a big change as well. Like, because in the course of being right, I didn't listen to anybody because I was right.
Yeah, I understand. If you could wave a magic wand, what would have to happen in the workplace for you to feel like you've left a lasting legacy?
That was one that I thought about for a while, because I think it changes daily on how I think about that, on what's going on with my team, or what's going on personally with somebody on my team, or who's taking precedence and who has my attention on that day. Or this pandemic came across, and I managed crisis communications for Juniper Network. So that was something last year that we had to kind of pivot on and do everything differently. So that was a perfect example of don't be right, be successful, because there was no right way. Success for us during a pandemic was allowing everybody to, obviously everybody's goal, and I know our goal was, how does everybody keep their job? How does everybody feel safe? How do we make sure as leaders that everybody that we are working for is safe and healthy and have the things they need? But then also, we have sales to make. We have a company to run. So none of this happens if we don't make sales and we don't have ROI on our investments, right? So there was a happy medium of, okay, everybody, are you happy? Are you healthy? But also, can you work, right? So there was this big, we had to. So I think that leading with empathy has been something I've learned during this pandemic. And I think taking that back, like you said, leaving a legacy would be that I got shit done, for lack of a better term, but also led with empathy. And I think that balance is very hard for people to do. A lot of the times I think they're 80% of one, 20% of the other, 10% of one, 90% of the other, or 1% of one and 120% of the other, even if the math doesn't add up. But I think that as long as I have led with empathy and have encouraged others to do the same and be successful at the same time and get shit done, as I said, I think that the balance will be something that I can be really proud of. Like, I don't want to leave anybody in the dust ever. As long as, if I'm running along, I want a full trailer of, the other 86 people that work for me on the trailer behind me. And that's hard to do as a leader. So I worry all the time that I'm pulling them along with me, because it matters to me. Because people pulled me along with them. I didn't do this on my own. People always pulled me along, and I remember the sacrifices they made. So.
Right. So what is your vision for yourself 3 years from now, and your career? What do you see?
3 years from now, I obviously I'm not content with where I am in the job. I always look at others. I'm a part of Chief. It's a women-founded women's group to support women. I'm also part of the Comms 50 group. It's a group of the 50 top comms leaders in the world. And then we all get together and we share ideas. And I noticed that a lot of them in their roles have taken that next step. And there used to be in comms roles in the comms industry, VP was the highest you could kind of get. But this role has evolved, and now there's titles such as chief comms officers, and they are, they're actually officers of the company that actually get to make decisions at the seat of the table. So, selfishly, title-wise, that's something that I am striving toward. We've never had it at our company. My boss, who is the CMO of the company, is actually very supportive of it and says, "Why don't you write the role? Tell me what the limits are to get to that role, or what the requirements are to get to that role, and let's work on it." So actually creating that role for myself and then stepping into it would be great. And then obviously personally, I have 2 kids, and the last one is heading off for her sophomore year at ASU, and then we'll be empty nesters. And then it's kind of funny now, it kind of comes full circle with the pandemic. I had to learn how to kind of have a new life and have a hybrid life. And I think once my kids are gone, I'll have to figure out what my purpose is again outside of work, right? So work-life balance again will probably come around in 2 years, not due to a pandemic, but being a quiet, empty home.
Yeah. So last question for you is, what is your fearless factor?
My fearless factor is well, I don't know. I know this is being recorded, but I go back and forth on it. So sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. I always speak up. And whether it's right or wrong. And like I said, I do it by being, don't be right, be successful. So I do it with the intention of being successful. But I do speak up a lot, and sometimes it comes back to bite me, and sometimes it doesn't. So I've found that, the pros of speaking up outweigh the cons of not speaking up. And I didn't speak up for so long because I did not think I had a seat at the table for so many reasons. And even when I got in this position, everybody within CMO staff were tenured. They were in there for years, 5-6 years, and I'd still sit in CMO staff and listen, because I didn't think that I had earned a seat at the table. And it was actually my CMO that said, "There's a reason you're at the table. We're expecting you to speak, right? We're not expecting you to listen. We expect you to speak. So speak up." So I've never stopped doing it. So I speak up is what I've learned, especially from college on. What's the worst that can happen, right?
That's right. Say no.
Right. They'll tell you no, and you'll be like, okay.
Right. Moving on.